How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. The Fed just raised rates. I want to talk about that, show what happened, because it did lead to a pretty substantial drop in the market. After we were pumping a little bit before that, Bitcoin was up almost towards 18,400. We also have a lot of other news coming from Binance, another exchange that is not Binance, that just had a massive data leak, some new legislature that senators are trying to push through, and some news from Tether. And we also have CZ talking about a specific person that he does not want to use Binance. Now, Jerome Powell just spoke as well, and I want to cover that because he talked about recession. He talked about how aggressively they're going to raise rates, whether they would decrease rates, and the chance that we have a pretty substantial recession. And he talked about a lot of other things as well. So I'm going to include that. And part of that, too, caused the market to jump up. So we had a pretty big drop right when the Fed announced their rate hikes, and we'll talk about why that is. But then we had it continue to bottom through the Jerome Powell speech. And then when he started to answer some questions, it started to jump up. You can see even more on the NASDAQ here. It's pretty substantial, the moves that it's making. So we'll include that in today's video. We're going to talk about all that. If you don't mind hitting the like button and subscribe button, especially the subscribe button, if you want news right when it happens and you want news that's not jaded one way or the other, hit that subscribe button so you can see future videos. Also, there's a link down there to Margex. So I used Margex here over the last 24 hours and actually made a nice little bump. I had 5x leverage. Of course, only do that if you're willing to risk your money. I bought it about 17.9, sold it at 18.4, and I didn't put a lot of money in it, but hey, it's a nice little 12% trade. Now let's talk about some of the Fed news. We raised 50 basis points. That was what we expected. Some people probably bought and then looked to sell off on that news. But also we got this number that was a little bit higher than expected. The federal funds rate projection for 2023 was going to be 5.1%. So this is the median. A lot of people thought that was going to be lower. In the September projection, they said 4.6. So now they're expecting to have to raise more and raise for longer. You can see 4.1 versus 3.9, 3.1 versus 2.9. So I think that is a little bit more hawkish than people were expecting, especially with good CPI numbers coming in. Now, I wrote down some notes from when he spoke, and he said at the beginning, just with his speech, that the inflation data for October and November shows welcome reduction in monthly pace for price increases, but it will take more evidence that it's a sustained downward path, basically saying, hey, this is positive, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop raising rates because two good CPI prints. Also, he said because of lags between increasing rates and the effect on the economy, they raised by 50 basis points today. They realize that it will take a substantial amount of time for this to go through and actually affect businesses and people. He also says they will stay the course until their job is done. Now, moving on to some of the questions that were asked of him. They say 75 basis points are still going to be projected in the SEP. Are they going to go in 25 basis point increments? Now, he says at some point, it's not going to be so important, the speed, but more the max rate and how long to hold it. They'll have to determine that at a later date, though. So, yeah, that is going to be the real important thing, which is, are we at 5? Are we at 6? And how long is it going to be up there before they start cutting rates? He said that they do think it's appropriate to move slower since they've risen so aggressively throughout the year. And that's obvious from what they're doing right now. They could have raised by 75 basis points and then just not raised at all at the next meeting and then continued to do that. But they want to raise a little bit slower to make sure that they get this right. Someone asked, what's the likelihood of rate cuts in 2023? He says that you won't see them cutting rates until they see inflation back at 2% in a sustained way. Some other things that he said, they would not consider changing the goal from 2%. Someone asked maybe 2.5 or 3% more acceptable or should be the new rate. And he said they're not even thinking about that. He also says, I don't think anyone knows if we will have a recession or not. They still see a strong labor market. He said that China reopening won't likely materially affect inflation. And then the last thing that he talked about is on a question, they said, what would you do if the recession is too deep before inflation comes down? And he basically just reiterated that they have a dual mandate. They're still seeing a strong labor market, and they would have to determine that at a later date. So overall, I didn't think it sounded too hawkish. I don't think it sounded too dovish. He's basically saying, hey, we think that we will have to continue to raise rates because a couple good CPI prints is not enough to make us think that we have moved rates up and that enough, and that CPI is going to fall back down to 2% and sustain it, right? They basically are going to continue to raise rates into next year, probably pause, most likely. This is my own interpretation. They're going to most likely have to pause and then redetermine if CPI is coming down enough. Now, of course, he answered other questions as well, but I think these were the most substantial, and I think it gives a pretty good insight, basically saying that there is a nothing burger, right? They're seeing positive data coming in, but that's what they would expect because they've been raising rates so aggressively. So I do think that is positive. Now, over the last couple of days, I've talked about how you should probably take your crypto off Binance. Now, I really did that because I didn't think that they gave enough information in their quote-unquote audit, and there's really no downside to holding your own keys unless you just can't handle that. So I said that you could get something like Trezor. There are links to that underneath the video. You could get a hot storage wallet, hot wallet instead. So you could use Trust Wallet or MetaMask or something like that, which isn't as secure as cold storage, but also probably better than exchanges. Yesterday, they had about $4 billion flow out of Binance. And today, Jim Cramer says, do you feel as reassured by Binance as I do? CZ replies, oh, Jim, please don't use Binance for the sake of everyone else. And then he says, half joking. But CZ did give some commentary on what just happened. He said FUD brought stress test, which in turn helps us to build credibility for exchanges that pass the test. If you want to hold your own coins, feel free to use Trust Wallet. They're owned, I believe, by Binance or invested in by Binance. Please keep your private keys safe. Otherwise, we are here at Binance. And he talked about yesterday how it helps them grow these stress tests, but they are annoying. He's annoyed by so many different media sources. Now, personally, I was not spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt more than I had to get the point across that you should probably hold your own keys because there's no real reason to keep the majority of your crypto on exchanges. There's really no need for that. So, of course, that is a little bit fearful. There's some uncertainty and there's some doubt, right? But that is the market that we're in right now. So hopefully you can understand where I'm coming from because a lot of people just don't know where to put their crypto. So I think, again, just put it in a place that you think is actually safe. Now, that is all good news, I think, for Binance. Hopefully they continue to get through this and they're unscathed. I'd never want anything to happen to Binance because a lot of people will be affected. But I think you should probably take your keys into your own hands. We just got news of Gemini with 5.7 million emails leaked. So be careful right now. If you have had money on Gemini, you might be part of a phishing scam. A third-party vendor related to Gemini, so not really Gemini's fault, appeared to have suffered a data breach on or before December 13. They were able to access 5,701,649 lines of information, including Gemini's customers' emails and partial phone numbers. So they did not get the full phone numbers, but still you have to be careful out there. They say some Gemini customers have recently been the target of phishing campaigns that we believe are the result of an incident at a third-party vendor. The incident led to the collection of Gemini customer emails and partial phone numbers. No Gemini account information or systems were impacted as a result of the third-party incident, and all funds and customer accounts remain secure. Just one more reason to get your crypto off exchanges. You know that if you have all your crypto off of something like Gemini, that if someone contacts you about getting your crypto, that you don't have any crypto on there. So you should not be getting contacted by them. They do talk about how Trezor had email addresses breached by a third-party newsletter provider a while ago. So if anyone reaches out to you about your crypto, just don't trust them. Your accounts are probably just fine. You don't have to they don't have to reach out to you, and they'll never ask for your private keys or anything like that. So if you have crypto on Gemini, just be careful out there. It's a dangerous time. U.S. Senator Warren introduces bill to KYC self-custody Bitcoin wallets, survey users, and crack down on privacy tools. Now, I don't think that this will actually happen. I don't know if they understand how difficult this would be to enforce. And I think most people that have Bitcoin cold storage wallets would not comply. They just wouldn't give that information out. Now, I would still fight against this. I think that this is basically the opposite of what Bitcoin should be. It should be able to give you privacy a bit, but also just keep your crypto safe and kind of away from everything else. It's on you to report your gains and losses in your crypto and stuff like that. And last thing I want to cover here, unless we cover the Fed, or maybe we covered that earlier, what Jerome Powell said, Tether to reduce secured loans to zero in 2023 amid battle against FUD. So this move comes in response to a wave of mainstream media attacks and FUD, primarily from the Wall Street Journal. Back in October, too, they did say that they're going to eliminate commercial paper from their reserves and replace the investments with U.S. Treasury bills. I think this is pretty much a money printer. They'd have to be really, really dumb to screw this up right now, because they have $65 billion. If they keep 50% on hand even, which I'm just throwing out a number, they keep 50% on hand for any kind of redemptions. They still have $30 billion. They can put the rest in Treasury bills and then get 3-4% on them and just make out with a ton of money. So again, I think that as they continue to deleverage, I think it becomes safer and safer to hold Tether, and hopefully nothing ever happens to Tether. I would like to see kind of some market share come away from them and go to someone that maybe has a less sketchy past and is a little bit more upfront with what they're doing. Maybe something like USDC. But for now, I definitely don't want Tether to have any kind of massive problem, because that would be devastating to the crypto industry. Now, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe. Let me know if there's anything specific that you want to see by commenting down below. Again, check out Margex and check out Trezor underneath the video as well. If you want to know what I buy and sell, there's a link to Patreon. And if you buy a full year, you can get a 16% discount. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.